Hey there. Today we're going to talk about table tennis for senior players. If you're over 50, playing table tennis might be a little bit more of a challenge than when you were younger, but you can continue to improve. You can still be playing well for into your 60s and 70s for sure, and even beyond that. One of the things about table tennis is that it's a game of skill, so your particular body type, or even if you're older or have some sort of disability, it may not be as big a factor as in some other sports. You certainly being in good shape is always helpful, but there's players that have all kinds of disabilities that continue to be competitive against players that are much younger than them. So there's some ways to still play well even though you're a little bit older than some of your competition, and table tennis is the perfect sport for that. For training for table tennis for seniors, you have to have a little bit of different approach, and the different approach has to do with you're not going to start from scratch. No matter where you are, what you've done to this point, you're still going to have some place where you played, you've developed habits, good or bad, and the bad habits are going to be harder to break the older you are. And if you've got a coach that's willing to accept that, not necessarily give up on trying to improve on those things, you still got a chance to play very, very well. But there are some limitations. If you get tired easier, then you probably aren't going to be able to put in as many hours training, and that can be a bit of a problem. Okay, this has been one of the most popular blog posts is Table Tennis for Seniors that I've written, and it's interesting that most information for table tennis players is written kind of assuming you're in great shape, that you're young, that you're developing in a perfect situation, and that's not always going to be the case for seniors. So when a senior comes in to work with me, I quickly evaluate what they're doing. It's really the same as I would any other player. What they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, what their physical limitations might be, what their tendencies are, and what their expectations are. Players do get frustrated when they don't see improvement quite as fast as they hope. That's not unique to seniors. Really developing as a table tennis player takes months, sometimes years. It depends what your expectations are. It's usually not too difficult to get players who have some ability to get them from the beginner stage to the competitive club level stage, but to get beyond that, to get beyond, say, 1500 as a USATT rating, is going to require putting in more time and more work for smaller bits of improvement. So you got to evaluate all those things, and it's important, and all these things are important for all players, but are especially important for a player who's going in over 50. Now, having said that, there's 50 and then there's 50. I've seen 50-year-olds who look and move like they're 70, and I've seen 50-year-olds who look and move like they're 30. It can depend on a lot of things, your life experience, your heredity, whatever it might be, but age is not the only factor. So the one thing about having been on the earth for a while, though, is you do create some habits, some tendencies in the way you do things, and table tennis is not going to be any different with that. So I really didn't start doing a lot of training myself until I was 40. I kind of established myself as a recreational blocking type table tennis player, and it took a while to break those habits when I say a while, several years before I really developed something that looked more like a real table tennis game and was able to advance and up my rating. So it's possible to do. So I started it at age 40, and it took a while. You're not going to improve at the same rate generally as kids do, teenagers do, players that are still growing and haven't developed any of the bad habits that adults tend to do. Still, with all that, you can take what's there and create perhaps a unique style that's still sound. You can't come up with a style that's so out of the ordinary that it's just not going to work, or it's only going to work under very extreme circumstances. You still got to build a foundation, and that's no different with a senior player. But the expectations are that you've got some habits that are going to be harder to change than if you were doing it in your 20s and 30s. So senior players, this is a great sport for you. You can continue to improve, and it's just going to take a little longer, which is not so different from most other sports. Table tennis is unique in that pretty much anybody can play it, but it's just as hard as any other sport to play well, and in some ways it's even harder. There's things as far as reaction time that slows as you age. There are vision, as far as being able to see the ball, being able to hear the ball. There are all kinds of things that you run into as you get older. I hate to admit, I'm 64 years old, and I definitely know that I'm not seeing the ball with my eyes as well as I used to, but there's a little bit more to it than that. You can hear the ball, you can see your opponent's racket speed. There's ways, when we talk about reading the ball, it's more than just vision. There's anticipating what's coming, and surprisingly, even though my vision is not as good as it used to be, I'm hitting the ball pretty much as well as I ever have. And so a lot of these limitations can be overcome, but there are some that just go with getting older. Now, having said that, it's interesting, if you go to a table tennis tournament, a lot of table tennis tournaments, you'll see a number of older players. It's hard to know exactly how old some of them are, but it's not unusual to see 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds playing competitively. And despite the fact that there's that many players that play into middle age and beyond, most of the table tennis information is geared towards the younger players. And it doesn't have to be that way, but it is different, and it probably shouldn't be surprising. The good news is you can play well into the 60s, 70s, and beyond, and it is possible. But if you're starting from scratch at that age, particularly if you've never done anything that was athletic, that could make your learning curve a little steeper. But I've worked with players at those ages and made considerable improvement. And just while it does take a little bit longer, if they're dedicated, you'd be surprised sometimes how much people can improve, even as senior table tennis players. So I want to thank everybody for watching this video. I'm trying to improve them. I'm trying to keep them interesting and try to plug into the topics that I am noticing that people are most interested in. So message for this one is, if you're an older table tennis player, don't give up. There's hope. You can get better. It will take a little longer. I don't question that, but there's probably no better sport than table tennis for seniors. All right, appreciate it. See you next time.